Hi, my name is Lindsie. I'm one of the founders of ACP. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for watching my show, Just Ponder It. Enjoy! Welcome to the show. Today we have Alex Clark. Alex, would you give us a little introduction about yourself?
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Alex, and I host two shows with Turning Point USA. One is a weekly podcast called The Spillover. I interview people that have jaw-dropping stories or really interesting expertise on certain subjects. And then I also have a daily show where I cover pop culture through a conservative perspective. I say pop culture without the propaganda, and that show is on YouTube daily. It's called Poplitics.
Ooh, yes, that's a pretty famous show. I really like it. And you say that you do a conservative show. What does being a conservative mean to you?
Conservatism is really honing in and protecting all of the same values that our founding fathers had in mind when creating America, right? And I think what it breaks down to for conservatives is protecting things like expression, religion, our families, all of that, whether it's under attack from political adversaries or not, but keeping those values protected and safe so that you and I can pretty much make our own decisions for our own selves, for our own families, and not have any interference from the government.
Yeah, have you faced any backlash through your journey of making this show of people who might not be as receptive of a, conservative show that's particularly about pop culture?
You know, it's interesting because I always get asked this, and I think that people always assume that the attacks I'll get are from the left. And I mean, of course, I do get some of that once in a while. But really, when I first created Poplitics, it was the first ever conservative show really covering pop culture. So think about it like this, like entertainment news of the day, celebrity gossip of the day. I always say if Fox News and E News had a baby, that's Poplitics. And so at first, it seemed like a lot of the pushback I was getting was actually from the right because it
That's
had never
interesting.
been, yeah, it had never been done on the right. And so I think it just took a lot of people, it caught them off guard and they weren't exactly sure of what to think of it. And they didn't know, like, is this a real serious project for us to, go after as conservatives? Is this worth our time to be covering pop culture and who's dating who and all these
Mhm.
different things? And I think a lot of them just didn't take me seriously. And they just thought, like, there's no political show on the right that's worth anything unless you're only covering hard news topics. And I was the first to push back on that and really say, no, we need to have entertainment, but from the right. And also, it is important to cover pop culture because pop culture is the one thing that no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, you're consuming it. If you
Right.
listen to music in the car, you're consuming pop culture. If you watch anything on TV or a movie or anything, pop culture. If you look at what's trending on Twitter, that's pop
It's
culture. I
everywhere.
mean, news, yeah, news also, but it's everyone consumes it. So if we use a tool that everybody, whether you fall politically on the left, on the right, or if you find yourself in the middle or consider yourself apolitical, I don't care about politics. You're always going to be consuming that. So what if we created a show that was conservative and the host is openly conservative, but I cover those topics that are going to be searching for on the internet anyways, like, who won The Bachelor last night, or Kylie Jenner is dating this person, or whatever, Justin and Haley Bieber. If you're Googling those topics, you're going to come across people talking about them. And then I'm covering it, but I have a conservative perspective on it. So if Haley Bieber, which she has done before, is shilling for Bernie Sanders or socialism and stuff, then I can say, well, here's why she's wrong and why she's dumb for this. Even though I'm a fan, like I enjoy following the Biebers, I like following her fashion and all that stuff. So I'm not coming at it like, pop culture sucks or so much better than you. I'm in the culture. I enjoy consuming this content, but I'm also going to say when things are wrong that celebrities do or say. So I think once that started gaining traction with young women, especially, I think that's when people that identified as conservatives all started to be like, oh, okay, this show is for real. They're playing ball, like they're coming to the game, they're showing up, and it's working. They're hitting home runs. The show started to gain this cult following, and these girls are getting together in their communities. They're running for school board in their towns. They're coming to Turning Point USA events and networking with other young girls. They're joining their Turning Point USA chapters. The show became more of it made such a bigger cultural footprint than I could have ever imagined, because through this little show talking about pop culture, I was helping positively change young voters' behavior. And so we've seen that over the course of 3 years. The show was launched in 2019, and we've seen that time and time again, that the show works in that regard, because it's more than just like a show. It's become a community and a brand.
Yeah. And I mean, it definitely seems like there was a gap there that it had never been done before. And I'm sure there was a little bit of that kind of challenge entering into that space. But it seems like it's really taken off and things like that. I mean, so do you have a particular audience that you're trying to reach through this? Is it really for everyone, or is someone in particular?
I think it's definitely for everyone, but obviously I'm openly conservative and talking about that. So I would say majority of my audience would also identify as openly conservative, young women. Most of my audience falls between the ages of 25 and 35. That's our biggest age group for our
Mhm.
demographic, females. And there also are a lot of people that say things like, I felt like a mushy middle voter. I never really identified as conservative, but I also didn't feel comfortable identifying as like a leftist or even a liberal. And so I just didn't really, I felt kind of politically homeless. And with politics, since it's kind of like this sorority sisterhood feel, I think a lot of them felt like, oh, okay, so it's okay to be conservative, but also love keeping up with pop culture and loving fashion and makeup and all these girly things. And I feel like I have a place, because sometimes, at least for me, I've been conservative my whole life. I grew up with conservative Christian parents. We talk politics all the time, but there was never a female commentator on the right that I was like, oh my gosh, I could totally be best friends with her. I could see myself going to get, brunch and mimosas and hanging out with her. Like, nobody felt that personable to me. And I thought I saw that void on the conservative right, and I wanted to create that, because I had a background in pop culture and media before this. I was in pop radio for 7 years previously, doing morning shows and things like that in different markets before I came to Turning Point USA to do politics. So I was familiar with that, like creating an audience, targeting young women, making them feel like we're friends, we know each other. I'm sharing things, beyond talking about pop culture. I also share things with them, like about my personal life and funny things I'm liking or hating or whatever, just like you would talk to a friend. And so that personal relationship, I think, changes minds and is more powerful at changing minds, because they feel like, oh, it's a friend, it's a trusted person that I know personally, and they're telling me, hey, this is the right way to approach this subject. This is the right way to think about something as sensitive as abortion. This is a more nuanced way of understanding, a movement like Black Lives Matter or what have you. They're more likely, I found, to kind of listen to me and be open-minded if they don't explicitly identify as conservative.
Yeah, I'm sure there had to be like that big change of just being a voice someone heard to now people can see you and it's probably more intimate and they get to know you more and things like that. Do you enjoy that aspect more?
Yes. Well, it's so fun because Turning Point, we throw these huge events for young conservatives all across the country. It's thousands of kids and young adults. I mean, any age can go, but majority are young adults, high school, college age girls and guys. And it's so fun to get to meet them and talk to them. And some of them, they don't come up and even introduce themselves. They're just like, oh my gosh, Alex, I have to tell you, when you said this is what I thought. They talk to me like, oh, of course I know who you are. Like, you know what I mean?
Like your
And
friends?
so, yeah, like there's no barrier. We're friends. And so that is so much fun, because just with this job compared to radio, I am more face to face with these people a lot more often than I would have been, continuing working in radio. But I had to leave it because, as someone who was always talking about her conservative beliefs and values, I was like, okay, I was facing so much censorship and things like that behind the scenes, where it got to the point I knew I had to make that decision of, do I stay in radio knowing I'm going to have to keep censoring my views and thoughts, or do I try to leave and sort of take what I've liked about this job and pair it with politics and make something better? And that's kind of what I did with mixing politics and pop culture, hence
That
the
was
name
definitely a big
Politics.
leap of faith, I'm sure.
Oh, it's scary because, yeah, Turning Point is headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. That's where I am right now. And I'm from Indiana. I was currently living in Indianapolis when Turning Point kind of talked to me, and I said to them, I was like, hey, I have this idea for this show. What do you think? They were like, yeah, you'd have to move to Phoenix. And I didn't know a soul here. Like I said, Turning Point, number one, not only did a conservative pop culture show not exist, but Turning Point USA as a whole, we didn't have the media department like we have now, where we have all these different shows and podcasts and things like that. There was none of that. So I came to Turning Point and said, what do you think about the idea of having a daily show that you guys produce for me? And they were like, let's do it. And so it was the first show that Turning Point had ever done. It was kind of a guinea pig. So I knew if it failed and no one watched this or no one liked it, that I was going to be obviously let go. And then, oh, I've just screwed up my entire career. I've moved across the country where I don't know a soul for what. And so I was very, very, very scared. And I mean, it took a very long time, probably a year and a half of honestly being almost in tears every day, of putting pressure on myself of, this show has to be freaking pristine. It has to reach people. People have to like it. They have to keep coming back. All of that kind of stuff. When it first started, it was me and one girl that was shooting and editing it. I didn't have the team that I have now or anything, because it wasn't a proven successful show. So it was just all on me to run the social media, to answer all the messages, to write the scripts, all of that. And so it was very nerve wracking. And I worked under a lot of pressure for a really long time, until finally, I think Turning Point was like, okay, like, what you're doing is working. We'll give you some help. And so now I have an amazing team, and it runs like a well-oiled machine every day.
Has there been someone that's been like that influence or that person in your life throughout this journey for you?
You know who I really respect and love, and who has always been kind to me from even before working at Turning Point, because I would talk to her when I worked in radio because I was a fan of her show, and she was just always so sweet, was Allie Beth Stuckey. And I've always appreciated that. Is one thing that I've learned. And this is, let me tell you something, conservatism, or if you work in Christian media or the church or whatever, there is no area of life that is, I guess, removed from catty people, people that are fickle friends, people that will use you. You know what I mean? That's just life. That's human nature, right? That's a fallen world that we live in. And so there have definitely been people that I felt like in the conservative movement, oh, they're my friends, and then felt like they backstabbed me or tried to rip off my shows or different things like that. But Allie has always been consistently kind, consistently supportive of my show. She's had me on her show. I've had her on my show. And so I've really appreciated that. And so her and I, we text all the time and bounce ideas off of each other. Sometimes I'll find a person that I think is an interesting interview, but I'm like, I think they're interesting, but I don't think that my show is the right show to like conduct this interview. But I'll send to her and I'll be like, this person's perfect for you. And sometimes she does the same thing to me. And so just finding those friendships is I think really unique, and I've appreciated that. And then honestly, I have a lot of people that I respect that do similar things, whether it's podcasting or whatever, that are not in the conservative movement. They're just business people that I really love and respect, like Michael and Lauren Bostick, who created Dear Media, which is a podcast company, and it's targeted specifically towards women. And they saw the value in, hey, when we have a talent, when we have a show, it needs to be more than just a podcast or a show. It has to be an entire brand. They need to have like a diehard audience. They need to have products that come out, all of this larger than life. And that was something that I was like, oh my gosh, yes, they've nailed it. That's exactly what every single podcast company should be going for. So there's a lot of people like that that I think inspire me.
It's definitely whatever industry you end up in, it's definitely nice to have your like girl squad of people who you
Yes,
know aren't like, you know, coming for you in your job, who have your back and things like that. I do agree with that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And having such a big platform, do you have maybe a message for women who are particularly young and still trying to find their political identity? Do you have anything you'd like to say to them?
Young and still trying to find their political identity. So they don't necessarily know how they identify politically, is what you're saying?
Yeah, like maybe a lot. I know a lot of people that I were friends with growing up, they kind of just believed what their parents told them, but they didn't really know why. It was a lot of, this is what they told me, but I'm not really sure and I don't really know where I lean on things and things like that.
Yeah, I always kind of my elevator pitch, I guess, for trying to figure out what you believe or conservatism is okay, well, do you like to make decisions for yourself or do you like someone else to make decisions for you? Well, I like to make decisions for myself. Great, you're probably conservative.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
because otherwise, if you identify as a leftist, you want the government to police how you eat, the medicines that you take, everything that your kids learn in school. You've no say in what happens to your kids at school. They want to control what religion you are, what you can or
Everything.
can't say, every aspect of life. Every aspect of life. And isn't it nice to wake up and say, wow, I can just make decisions for myself and my family. And like I said earlier, that is what conservatives are trying to conserve,
Right.
hence the name. And that's why we fight so hard for things like limited government. We want the government to step in when human life, for example, is on the line, when somebody could be hurt, like with abortion.
Right.
Those are the instances where we feel, the few instances where we feel like, okay, the government does have a duty to protect its citizens, to protect human beings. And so those are like the few things that it is important to have a working government. But for the most part, we should be able to make our own decisions. And that's why I believe conservatism is the best for everybody, every community, no matter your skin color, no matter how you grew up, no matter how rich you were, poor you are, anything. You know what's best. The government doesn't know what's best.
That is true. I know a lot of, young people try to paint the conservative side as kind of these old white men who are kind of stuffy and things like that, or they're the anti women's rights side. And it's like, that's just not true. That's not what that side really is.
Yeah, if you value being able to think for yourself, like I said, then you're going to really enjoy being a female conservative. And listen, conservatism is a huge spectrum. You have people that are very moderate, you have people that are very far right, but we do encourage everybody to think for themselves, which is great. And the thing about being a young person in the conservative movement, I mean, do I look like a stuffy, old white guy?
No.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. Like, my whole brand is, hey, I love fashion, I love pop culture, all of these different things. I love Taylor Swift, and I know that's a controversial thing for being conservative, but I do. I've loved her my whole life. She's the background on my phone. But I can enjoy those things and still think a little bit differently in regards to what do I think is best for this country and our citizens, and that's okay. We like a lot of the same things culturally, but maybe we have some different political beliefs. We're just conservative young people are just like everybody else. We really are. We're not that scary and spooky and different. And I would say also for people that don't know where they fall, why don't you go to a few different things? Like, you don't have to tell anybody that you identify as a liberal. Go to a conservative event, on your college campus, go to one of these conservative speaking events. Don't protest or anything. You don't even have to talk. Just sit in the audience and just listen.
Yeah.
And just think for yourself after that. Okay, how do I honestly feel? Forgetting, like, walk in there like you're a blank slate, listen to the speech, and then at the end be like, okay, how did I feel from that? How did it make me feel? Do I feel threatened? Do I feel like I've learned something? Do I feel encouraged? And then go to a more of a liberal speaking event or a leftist speaking event on your campus or in your community, and then do the same exercise. Go in. And conservatives should do the same thing. See how you feel. What are the things that they say are important to them? Does it make you feel encouraged and happy, or do you feel depressed and anxious? Because conservatives and liberals view the world and everything culturally in an entirely different lens. We have a totally different worldview. So to the left, everything is doom and gloom all the time. Climate change is ending the
Very
world. We have to operate.
pessimistic.
Yes, pessimistic. We're operating on fear, and conservatives are the complete opposite. So you might find yourself sitting and listening to some people talk with a point of view that you thought you wouldn't like or vehemently disagree with and be like, wow, this was so different than anything I ever thought.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've gotten to see like a lot of the world and the things that are, are issues and going on with everyone. Would you say that there is an issue? What would you say would be the biggest issue for the world right now, just from what you've seen in your experience?
Well, for our country, I would think, especially as a younger voter, I'm a millennial. So as a young millennial voter, I mean, for me right now, I would say one of my top concerns is big tech censorship. And why I say that is because I don't want somebody else to decide for me what is a good idea or what is a bad idea. I want to see the really bad ideas and I want to see the really good ideas, and then I want to pick and choose for myself
Mhm.
what I want to believe. I hate the idea of any idea, no matter how abhorrent, being squashed or erased from our history books, from the internet. Even the most like depraved, terrible, hateful things, they should be allowed on the internet, because we then can see people reply and debate them and say why those things are wrong. And so that is so crucial. And I worry about not only, I mean, Gen Z is young or whatever now, but I mean, they're starting to go into the workforce and graduating college too. But you're looking at Gen A and then generations after them. They could grow up with hardly anything available to them on the internet, just Googling it or anything. They can't find answers to different things. They can't find alternative viewpoints. That's a very, very scary world to live in, because even the people that have extremely scary points of view when it comes to the world, or hateful points of view, they will find a place on the internet, wherever that is, or in real life, and they will go there and they will find like-minded people, and it will just bubble over into scarier and scarier things if you don't allow them that outlet to
Right.
have conversation with people and be debated, right? So I really worry about that. I think we've seen with the Twitter files and Elon Musk revealing all of the censorship that was taking place between the government and Twitter in the last couple years, that we know is happening with all the other social media sites too, and Google. So Facebook, Instagram, Google, all of these different people, they're doing the same stuff in Google, if not more than what Twitter was doing. And we only have the definitive proof on Twitter, but we know it's happening. So
Right.
that's a huge concern, I think, to me and a lot of other young conservative voters.
I think that's a really valid concern. I know I remember reading 1984 in high school, just that required summer reading. But when we'd get to the discussions and it'd be like, well, our world isn't really like that. But then the older I got, and once I'm in college now and just going through my classes and starting to see the world, with eyes as an adult now, not a child, there's a lot more similarities than I realized between this dystopian world that was painted so many decades ago and
Yeah.
what's happening right now.
Well, 1984 was supposed to be, hey, this is like a fictional book of saying this is what you don't want to happen. The problem is the left took that book and used it as an instruction manual,
Yeah,
and that's how they are making their decisions, you know? So that's what's scary. So, yes, that is a very good book.
it is. It's like, oh, that should be a warning, and it's happening though, and people aren't even
Yeah,
realizing it.
absolutely.
Well, last question for you. What's next for Alex Clark?
Gosh, professionally or personally or both?
Either or.
Okay. I would say professionally, I want to continue. I really want to focus on growing the Spillover, which is my podcast that comes out every single Friday, anywhere you get your podcast. That's the one where I interview somebody. And that's so fun for me because I get to hear those different points of view and ideas and things like I was talking about. Everyone from, hey, they used to be an exorcist, or escaped a serial killer, to like a health or fitness expert or whatever. There's all different types of people that I've interviewed. Every week is completely different. So if you don't like one episode, you're bound to find an interview that you like on a different subject, a doula or whatever. I've interviewed so many different types of people. So that show I really want to grow. I would say that's my main goal professionally this year. And then personally, I mean, I'm out here, I'm dating, I'm navigating that world. And so I definitely think about like having a family and all that kind of stuff. So if, that's in the cards and that's totally God's will, but hopefully that's what's next for me, but you never know. So, hey, if you're in that season of singleness like me, then I feel you on that.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here and talking with me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.